Hello, Miss
Hello.
Diana Marie, and welcome to A Cup of
Good
Clarity.
morning. Good morning. Thank
So good
you.
to have you here.
I'm so honored to be here.
Come on.
Yeah.
So we had such an amazing conversation recently, and we did it on Zoom so we could see each other since you're out in North Carolina and I'm here in Miami, Florida.
Yeah.
And I have to say that I think we both finished that conversation, said, darn it, we should have hit the record button
Should have
somewhere because
recorded.
it was such a good conversation.
It really was. It really was.
But here we are doing it all over again for real on the
Yeah.
podcast today. And so I welcome you for being here. And part of the reason why you're here is for several reasons. One is because I just love everything about you. I love everything you stand for. I've told you that before last time we spoke. How authentic you are, how real you are, and how vulnerable you show up on social media, which is not easy, and it's not
Yeah.
the norm for most people. I
Yeah.
tend to find most social media is very practiced, rehearsed, or everything just made to look absolutely perfect. And I think you
Right.
go a different route. So that's just one thing I appreciate about you. And the second thing is just your beautiful heart and your depth. And that was very much true in the conversation that we had yesterday, or not yesterday, just about a week ago. The
Yeah.
days move
Yeah.
so quickly.
I
I
know.
get, I get, it's like boom, from
It
one day
felt
to
like
the
it happened
next.
yesterday.
It's true. But and then the third thing is just this journey that you're on, which is one of the things I really want to talk about today, because I think you've had so many aha moments throughout it, right?
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
but before we get started, I always like to ask my guests, what's the one thing that you are grateful for in this day?
You know, honestly, I'm just grateful for opportunity that God
Mm,
chose me to be alive in this season, in this period of life, because as we all know, it's not easy.
mm,
So he purposely placed us here though because he knew that we could go through this and that we would come out changed. And so for the better, it is the hope always. But I'm just thankful
yeah.
for opportunity. And just being here with you today, to be honest. Like that was at the
Ah,
top of my gratitude list that I
ah,
was like, I'm so excited to speak with you today and just have the opportunity to share my journey because I think every time we do this, it makes a difference for some, if even just one person, and that's
absolutely.
what it's about.
Absolutely. I have that very present of mind every time I come on here to
Yeah.
record a podcast episode or do a workshop or meet with a client, or any way in which I'm serving. I always just love to see, how that affects people. And sometimes you don't think about it
Yeah.
so much, but it does. And so we always
Right.
have to remember that even a smile sometimes to a
That's
stranger
it.
goes such a long way.
That's it. That's
I
it.
want to piggyback on something you just said, which happened to be with about opportunity. You're
Yeah.
grateful for opportunities. So what are some of the opportunities that you have remained open for recently in your life?
Well, even just moving out of Miami was opportunity. And not something, if you asked me 4 years ago if I would be in North Carolina, I would have been like, what? Like away from the beach? That never. Um, because I am a water baby through and through. And, but I just saw there was this space that I needed to move to in order to transform myself.
Mm,
And nothing, of course, against the city. It has everything to do with what's inside of you because you can be honestly anywhere and still be going through what you're going through. But I do believe there's often times where it's not just about the city, but it's about your surroundings and your community, whether it's called to be around family or it's a call to be around a friend that's close, you're very close to. So I've really been leaning into what community means in this season of life
mm.
and the power of that. Who's meant to be in your life from one season to the next. So it's just, and of course, the only opportunity, of course, that has given me this ability has been teaching online, teaching remotely, which again would have never crossed my mind. I still tell people I teach piano online, and
Mhm.
And the first thing every person has asked me is, how?
Yeah.
And I always want to say, I wish I could tell you, but it's really something I'd have to show you. You'd have to
Right.
experience. And yeah, so working remotely as a teacher, again, never expected this to cross my path, especially in
Because you
this.
you were a teacher in a classroom here in
Yes,
Miami. You had full, full salary, full teacher, and then
yes.
you kind of what heard those whispers of spirit
You
did
know,
that start that way, or was it just somebody asked you a question and said, "Hey, look, there's this, come."
well, I'm so tied to the ways that God speaks to us. I do believe that He speaks to us in just the way you need it. It's not
Mm,
going to be the same for every person. You know, some people are like, "How do I know if I'm going to hear from God, or how do I hear from God?" And I wish there was one answer, but it's really going to take you being still. And I think that's what this season has also taught me, just to be still. And because we sometimes get so caught up, but back to your question, because I just love talking to you. Um, when I 2020 happened, I honestly, I could just go on about my actual teaching position and how that was a call from God to be in that classroom. I never imagined teaching middle high. I didn't go to school
mm,
for that. I didn't go to school to teach piano in the classroom. Um, and I had applied for that position, and I didn't know what I was applying for. And I ended up teaching there for 8 years.
wow.
And it was a dream. I told my students every day, I said, I don't know how this is possible, but I do believe there's a purpose that far exceeds piano, of me being here in front of you. And built this program that I adore to this day. The students, we still are in contact, and it was just about so much more than piano. And then, of course, COVID hit in 2020, and you think, yeah, you could teach certain things, but piano in person, having to touch
Yeah,
the same keyboard and all that, it's a
sure.
little bit difficult. So, I was given this option of either I had to come back or not. And 3 months prior to that, somebody had opened my mind to outschool. They said, "Hey," I led a book study on Zoom during the pandemic,
Wow.
and of the purpose-driven life. And somebody in that group said, "Hey, had you ever heard of Outschool? I think you do very well." And I said, "No, never heard of it." I got on that night, did all my research, because that's how I am. I just research things, and I I applied and I got accepted because of the influx of students they were having at the time. They were
Of
hiring
course.
like left and right, like overnight. And that started that. So that when I was given that ultimatum 3 months later of whether to come back or not, I just knew, like you said, like the Holy Spirit, I believe, was
Hmm.
like, this is your opportunity. I had always wanted to run my business full time. Um, but man, it was so uncomfortable. And that's what I've been learning. God knows that Diana Marie needs to be uncomfortable to move, because otherwise, if I'm comfortable, I'm like, leave me right here, Lord. I'm
Right here,
good.
right here. No need to stir the pot.
Right. He's like, Diana, you need to be uncomfortable. And I made that decision, and my students and I, we cried. We cried in every
Hmm.
class. And um, because it was such a hard season for them too, and
Yeah.
for everybody, and there was solace in our community, but I just knew that that was the opportunity now to move, and without, without it being, I guess, 100% my decision. And yeah, and it's just grown exponentially in a short amount of time. And again, something I'm thankful for every morning. In my gratitude journal, I'm thankful for every student and family that has chosen to register for my classes, because I
That's
know there's
amazing.
options in
Sure.
the world, and
Nowadays, for sure there are.
so many. And the community that's just been born through this program has, like, it just, I live by Ephesians 3:20, where God is able to do exceedingly and abundantly more than all you can ask, think, or imagine. And
Yes.
he continuously shows me that in my life. And I'm just blown away every time, because I try. I'm a storyteller. I like to create my own storyline, but he's a master. He's a master author, storyteller. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. And I've been teaching on average like 125 students a month on this platform.
Wow.
And I, again,
And
it's one of those.
I'm sure teaching them far more than piano. Just something tells me that. Just because, just knowing you, it's like, yeah, it's a piano lesson, but you're going to get a little extra here with Diana Marie.
You know me well. You know me well because I've never, on, I wish I could just tell you my whole storyline, but it's just, I never imagined teaching piano. And I remember a few years back, I was like, God, why am I teaching piano? Like, I never grew up as like, I want to be a piano teacher when I grow up,
Right.
nor did I believe being a piano teacher at like 22, like 22 on, I was like, this is wild. And, but I've seen how he's used me as a vessel in those classrooms to speak life into my students. And that's when I realized when I gained freedom of who I was, which was through partnership with another teacher. Her name is Stephanie Coates, who is the most phenomenal like woman, mentor, friend that I've ever encountered. And she showed me through her teaching what it was like to be authentic and how that changed your relationship with your students. And from that time on, it was a whole different atmosphere in my classrooms. Like kids felt like they could be themselves and that they felt seen, heard, and loved. And that is like above all else. I'm like, if I used to say, if you learn a song, awesome. But if you walk out of here with gained confidence and self-esteem, that's what you're here for.
Like, that's going to carry them so much further in life.
Yeah. And that's what I've seen. Thankfully to Outschool, I get reviews often and I'm able to see, I'm like, am I doing what I'm purposed to do? And I say, okay.
And it's interesting because I think a lot of times as teachers, I was a former educator, as you know, for 28 years, and we get very caught up with the to-do list and the things that have to happen. And, are these kids making progress or not, and measuring things by data and all these points. And we forget that there's this other element to being an educator, to being a teacher, professor, however it is you serve in the educational world, that goes beyond what's in the curriculum. And that's the stuff that nobody teaches you, that comes from your authenticity, where you show up every day. And kids don't want you to be, I tell this to teachers all the time in my workshops, it's kids don't want you to be perfect. They don't want a perfect teacher. They want a teacher who's present. They want a teacher who does exactly what you said, sees them, hears them, feels them, understands them, right? And gives them something beyond the textbook. And so that's important. That's
absolutely. And I see how it started with me though. Like I had to be doing the work in myself to show up in that capacity to actually be able to carry them to new levels. If I wasn't working up to level up, then I couldn't, like your cup of clarity, like I was an empty cup. I could not pour from that. So, and I noticed when I started to really have my own quiet time, start reading books that were feeding my soul. Like that's when I showed up and I was like, and I would read stuff to them. Like, again, I must say, as a teacher, just for all the other teachers listening, I was an elective teacher. I do understand the difficulties that do come when you are a core teacher. And it's just finding those opportunities, even if it's 2 to 3 minutes at the beginning, like you have that space to do bell ringers and things of that will pour into, like that will set up their mind. It sets them to receive whatever you have to say after that.
Sure. Like and whatever anybody else has to say after that too.
Exactly. So it's just, I find teaching, I ask a guy, but I've learned so much through teaching that I never would have, I don't think I could have learned anywhere else. So
it's life is our greatest school. I always say that, and we're forever learners. And this is how we evolve and grow as human beings, is to continue to pay attention, when the lessons come into our lives, these patterns that we keep repeating, kind of like take an honest, hard look and do the inner work, as you were just saying. And one of the things I say too to teachers, it's about teaching from the inside out. So it's about really kind of making your inner world, match what you'd like to, what you hope and aspire to be as a teacher on the outside world. So this is how you make a difference. But I have a question for you. As you were making these choices to move from Miami to North Carolina, and many of us are presented with, like you said, opportunities, and oftentimes the first words out of our mouths are no. Ain't gonna do it. Ain't gonna do that. That's out of my comfort zone.
Right.
Like you said, we don't like to get uncomfortable. So how did you deal with the uncertainty? Because I'm sure there was quite a few things that weren't 100% in place, but you did it anyway.
And that's where I really just I lean into my faith. I
Mm.
seriously lean into my faith, and I just heard a message this past weekend by Stephen Furtick out of Elevation Church here in North Carolina, and he was saying that what comes next, like that was the whole premise of, and it's not really what's happening in the moment; it's what's going to come after that that is really going to make your story make sense.
Mm.
Because to be honest, I and it's funny you ask that question because I've had several friends and people who follow on Instagram, like they reach out and they're like, man, you're so brave. But to me, I saw no other option. Like when
Mm.
you're out of options and you're just like, this is it. Like when I stepped away, I hadn't planned to leave teaching. And we all know what teachers make. Like it's not like I had this
Right.
blossoming like savings account, and I just didn't have any other option. And that's where this stems from. But I just the same time as when I moved to Miami back in 2010, I knew nobody. I was going to school, and I just remember those being the pivotal moments of when I leaned into my faith even more. Like I remember spending every morning with God and really just like reading through my devotion because that's all. And not to say that I
Yeah.
only want to lean in when that's all I have, but what better place to lean into when that's all
Sure.
you know?
Especially when
But
it fills you and gives you the courage and the confidence to move forth in life.
absolutely. And so this message he said about faith, because this has been my journey of just trusting what God has, because a lot of what's happened in my life just doesn't make sense in the
Mm.
moment. But he said, faith is believing in advance what will only make sense in reverse.
Say
And
that one more time, please. I need to take
absolutely.
that
So
in.
yeah, it's faith is believing in advance what will only make sense in reverse.
Oof.
And that's the story, like it doesn't make sense that I just left my job. It doesn't make sense that I teach piano online. It doesn't make sense that I left Miami. Like it so much of it doesn't make sense. And to be completely transparent, I'm still waiting. I'm still in the midst of this journey. I wish I could come on here and be like, and this and this and it all worked
Yeah.
out, and
Check, check,
but
check.
right, but it's not true. And I think there's so many people also listening who we're in the midst of it. And I just want to encourage that there is reason and there is going to be another side. Like this is not
Yeah.
the end of your story. And so that's where I've leaned in. I'm still figuring things out. However, the only thing that keeps me steadfast is the fact that this is not the first time. And I think that's the beauty of age and wisdom is we are
Mm.
able to look back and be
Mm-hmm.
like,
Yeah.
I think it's I had said something a few, I think it was a couple of years ago. It was like we forget to remember, but we remember to forget. Like we fall into this stage of like, oh, is this going to? But we forget to look back. I think there's such power not to miss what happened or want to be
Right.
in the past, but
Right.
rather
And
to just
regretting or being bitter, but looking back
right.
to kind of move forward. Is that what
Yes,
you
and
mean?
yeah, and seeing how God has worked things out in the past,
Mm.
like how what you thought was the worst part of your story didn't
Okay.
last. That
Right.
season changed, and now you're in a different space,
Or how
and
you
it's
got through it. A lot of
yes,
times when we're caught in a situation where we're asked to be resilient, right? There's an
right.
obstacle, adversity, something really difficult that happens. And we feel like you said, it's the end of the world. This, how am I
Hmm.
ever going to get out of this? And we forget that maybe
Yes,
just a few years back, there was a very similar situation and you blossom through it
that's
and
right.
you're stronger and more resilient for it. And so that's I like that idea of looking back, but not with regret, or bitterness,
Right.
but looking back to sort of see where you've been and also to applaud yourself, be a little proud of yourself of how far you've come. We forget to do that.
Yes. Yes. Oh, yes.
which which brings me to your other part of your journey, which is what you share a lot on your
Mhm.
Instagram page, and that is your weight loss journey. And I love that you see this as not just another weight loss story. It's really a journey to well-being and wellness beyond that. So tell us, where you've been with that, because I know there's many people that, struggle with weight or their body image or things like that, and have tried over the
Yeah.
years, to do something and feel like I just can't get ahead, or I just can't get this right. And,
Right.
maybe short of giving up today, Diana. So I think your story, I'd love to hear just a little bit more about that.
Well, my weight has been an issue I've tried to avoid my entire life. I'm like, God, I don't want this. Like, why me? Why have I battled this for so long? And it's really just recognizing there's certain things that are part of our story that are meant to help others,
Mm,
to work through it as well, whatever it teaches us, or whatever the reason might be. And you had said earlier about how I'm so transparent about it online, and um,
you
I'm
are.
so inspired by those that are. So I was like, I could be that way too. Like, there's really nothing to hide. And I'll never forget a friend of mine. One day, what makes me transparent, then I'll go back to the journey, is just that I remember I was wearing a jacket over some outfit, and she was like, "Why are you wearing a jacket over the outfit?" Like, she said it in a loving way.
Right.
And I said, "Because I don't want to show my arms."
Mm.
And she was like, "Diana, we all know you have arms. It's okay." And
It's
I was
okay.
like, and it sounds like something so small, but I carry that. What Dina said to me so many months back, like, I still carry that with me through my journey, because even people have said something recently. They were like, "How do you show yourself working out like that?" And da 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 da. And I said, like, this is who I am. I'm not going to hide anything, and we're all
Right,
working
right.
out. And and I think that's the toxicity of social media, is that we sometimes believe that we only have to
Mhm.
show up as our perfected selves.
Yeah.
And all it's doing, it's not helping really a lot of us, especially with this specific style of journey, that your outfits have to match, or you have to be at your after in order to show that you're working out,
Right.
and so this journey has really just I've always had to return back to loving myself where I am,
Mm.
because I had a big issue with hating who I was, and deciding I'm not going to get this outfit until I don't want to show up with my friends until. And I touched earlier on community. I have to say that, like, I prayed about friendship when I was in high school, and God has shown up tenfold, like, with the beautiful souls that are in my life. And I'm able to be transparent with them, and I think that helps me on all
Of
accords,
course. Yeah.
and I remember one day being like, "I don't even wanna see you guys." Like, it was a trip where I hadn't seen them, and I was like, "I don't even wanna see you because I've gained weight," and they were like, "Diana,
Mm.
why?" Like, that has nothing to do with who you are and how much we love you. And having those people that encourage and motivate you and see you for you,
Yes.
like, I think
Yes.
that's so important, to surround yourself. And I know there's people who are like, "Well, I don't have that." Well, I encourage you first to pray about that. Like, God hears your heart and he knows that struggle, but also just to make yourself available, and to get
Yes.
around different groups, whether it's a small group or a
Yeah.
meetup or something,
Mhm.
like, there's so sometimes we get so caught up in that we keep ourselves in that space.
Right.
And
Yeah,
um
opening up to, again, like you
yes,
said, to new opportunities. Now it's friendship
yes,
opportunities.
absolutely.
Say yes to an invitation from one friend. Hey, come meet. I have a meeting with two friends, and come along.
Right.
And saying yes to that because they could be people that align with you and match up with you, and you could just strike it with someone immediately. And that's
Absolutely.
a beautiful
Absolutely.
thing.
And you never know. Like, I one of my dearest friends, it was literally from a hair supply place that she worked at the time in Miami Beach. And we just connected through hair. I was like, "Your hair's amazing." She's like, "I love your hair." We were like, "We love each other's hair." Like, it was just perfect. And we've exchanged social media, and she's become like a soul sister to me through social media. But um back to the weight. So, yes, I found that the journey has to begin with loving yourself in the present moment. And something that I learned I mean, I had actually lost 100 pounds prior. Um,
Wow.
but it was, there were so many things that just happened following that, that I didn't instill the correct habits along the
Right.
way that would sustain me over time. Instead, it was like a crash and this and that. But um, I remember that I started that journey, and in that journey, I decided to do affirmations because
Mm,
somebody had mentioned affirmations to me, and saying, I am beautiful, like I am enough, I am worthy, and speaking that over you because they say that you have
yes.
30,000 thoughts a day, like, and the fact that, or more.
More. It's
And
like 60,000 and 45,000 of them are negative.
right. So we have
Thank
to start.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
go
No,
ahead.
we
Go
have
ahead. I was
just saying how we have to combat that. We have to set
Mhm.
ourselves up from the beginning of the day. I start, and man, listen, and not even weight related, but I remember when I started doing that, I would show up to class. I hadn't lost any weight at that moment. Nothing had changed about me. But my students were like, Miss, you look really nice today. Something,
Aw.
something, something. And it was nothing had changed. Same 4 outfits I wore every week. My hair was the same. Like nothing had changed, but it exudes something. When you have already spoken that over yourself, others can see that.
Mhm.
And I think the most important other to see that is yourself. When you look at
Yes.
yourself and you start to believe that. And so that's really where the transparency comes from online. Like I've spoken these things over myself. Do I have low moments? Absolutely. Like I think we
And
all
you
do.
share those too, which I think is beautiful. You share
Yeah.
your frustrations, you share your setbacks, you share the things that are quirky or funny, that happen to you in your life. And I think it's really it's just encouraging and it's inspirational. So
Yeah.
I just thank you for doing that and for being
Oh,
so real.
you're
One of the things I
welcome.
want to mention about affirmations for those of you that are listening and don't know Louise Hay, she
Mhm.
was the absolute queen of affirmations and taking that a step further by doing mirror work. So the same thing you
Mhm.
were saying, I love you, you're beautiful, and you say it to yourself in the mirror, looking
Yes.
into your own eyes. There's a power to that. So I encourage anyone who's maybe going through a similar journey or feels a little lost right now or having a little bit of difficulty with some self-love to
Yeah.
start doing some affirmations like that or look into the work of Louise Hayes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, the first time I did it, I realized I think we all do it. You look past the mirror and you're looking at everything, right? You're like, how
Hmm.
do I look? My hair, everything. But the first time I did that and actually looked at my own eyes, like I looked into my own eyes,
Right.
it was over.
Powerful.
I was like, who is this? Like
Hmm.
I was meeting somebody brand new
Yeah,
because I
there's
never
such
had
power
looked.
in it. There really is.
Yes, yes. So yeah, and I honestly have just been learning. I've read the Atomic Habits by James Clear and
Right. We
Compound
talked about
Effects.
that. We both love that book.
Yes, and Compound Effects. I can't remember the author, but both books, man, like just the 1% of getting better every day is what I'm
Yes.
learning, and the power behind that. Not because honestly, the first program when I lost 100 pounds, I'm not knocking the program in any way. I think it does have power and can work for specific people. But I was losing like 2 pounds a day, for an
Wow.
extended period of time, and learning that it's okay not to lose that much weight in a day, and that I've had to reset my mind for the long term. Like this is not just for a short term gain. Like this is for the long term health of who I am at this season of my life. And as I'm getting older and seeing others getting older around me and different health issues like that could be tied to how you eat and weight.
Yes.
I just see that as a mirror to like what do I want that to look like in my life, in the next 10 years, or keep it into the next year. There's power in health, and be that mind, body, and soul. I do it, make sure to encompass all three into my journey because,
Yeah.
like you said, that mind work of like how you speak to yourself, if you're working against yourself in the first place,
Hmm.
then that's where the journey might stop short, you know. And does it always have to be like a full-fledged like mind, body, soul? I don't know. It depends on you. I don't want to say
Right.
one or the other, but I do believe there is a power when you're looking to level up holistically, like as an all-around human being, because it's not really just about your weight.
No.
You know, it's not. There's still things that go along with that, and whether
What
they're
did you
habits.
find? What did you find is your biggest sort of thing that went along with that beyond the weight? Like as far as your mindset shift, what do you find has been your biggest sort of like shift
Yeah,
there?
again, it was the all or nothing. Like I've been an all or nothing person. If I if I was on a program and I'm eating well and then I eat off for a day, I was like, what? Like, you know,
Yeah.
that meme
Black
when
or
the guy's
white,
throwing all the
very, yeah.
papers in the air, like it's done.
Yeah.
So yeah, that black or white thinking of thinking it's all over. Like I can't
Hmm.
come back after that. And I think it also comes from being a perfectionist, which I like to believe is tied into being an artist, which is, you know, like you play piano, it's always for, you know, to play the right thing. And it's so I've had to step back and say, Diana, this is not about being perfect. This journey, it is a journey. Journeys are not, you see those little visuals all the time. Like, what does a journey
Yes.
look like? It's up, down, up, down, up, like
Yeah.
back and forth. And that's what it's about. It's not. And that's really where this lesson of habits through Atomic Habits came into play was I love something James Clear says is he says, if you miss a day, fine, but just don't miss two in a row. You
Mm.
know, like if one day is off, just don't let it catapult into this like
Right.
snowball effect into every day.
Yeah, and many of us tend to do that. Like you said, if we're very much black or white thinking and perfectionists,
Mm-hmm.
we tend to blame, criticize, judge, and shame ourselves for not keeping on track. And we forget that we're humans.
Mm-hmm.
And there may have been things outside of our control that day that didn't allow you to eat perfect, didn't
Yes.
allow you to go to the gym. You may not be feeling well physically because of health reasons, right? So
Right.
I love that being able to just look at yourself and speak to yourself with loving kindness, as you know, the
Yes.
mindfulness practices, that mindful self-compassion is so important. And knowing
Absolutely.
that it's a journey and
Yes.
it's okay. You've got whatever next day, weeks, months, years ahead
Right.
of you to do that.
Right. And I love what you said with that because um so something I used to say with my students also in the high school level. Now I say this, of course, I had live students. Well, I still have live students, but I'm teaching now 7 through 13 majority. So it's different, you know, different things that I'm able to teach to, but still, you know, in the same manner. And um, I still say it actually to the younger ones. Where my father, when I used to bring home my report card growing up, he would say, he would be like, "Was this your best?" And of
Mm.
course, as a teenager, you're like, yeah, whatever it says, that was my best. Yes. But I translated that into my teaching and into myself, my own journey. You know, like as long as it is your best, then that is
Yeah.
really all you can do in the moment. You know, like you said, if that's what's available to eat in the moment, and you're not going to try to starve yourself, like then that is what you know, and then forgive and or not even forgive. You know, if that's what's available, that's what you do. But it's really comes to this: are you doing your best for yourself and for what your future is? Or like my friend likes to say, I'm doing this for my future self. You know, like
Yeah.
this is what I'm doing.
Yes.
So
And which
yeah.
comes back to knowing your why,
Yes.
deeply knowing your why. And I think it sounds like in this part of this journey versus your journey before with weight
Mm-hmm.
loss, you had a very clear and solid understanding of the reason and the why you were doing it for yourself, right?
Yes, and it's overall health, you know. Like I don't want to be on medication. Like my goal is not to. Should I have to? Okay, like I honestly this is one of the things that threw me when I had lost the 100 pounds. It sounds, and again, it's this is me being transparent. I had been at my lowest weight that I had been since I was in high school. This was 3 years ago. And I went to the doctor and she put me on blood pressure medication. And
Mm.
I was like, what? Like I've done all this work. I lost 100
Yeah.
pounds and now get put on blood pressure. Like that really threw me all the way off. And then I had done like a weight loss, one of those like what do they call them? The money like you could win money if you
Oh,
the
right.
like
Yes,
the bets and things.
like a competition type of thing or a
Yeah,
challenge.
and I lost it by like a 1.5 pound. Listen, those
Mm,
things will trigger you, and it's
yes.
just I.
Yes.
But it's learning who you are, and I had to learn. I was like,
Right.
Diana, you can't do those programs because if you don't win, like you throw again that black or white. Forget it. Um, but yeah, that was really it hit me, and so I've recognized that like that is important to me. For that to
Yes.
trigger me in that way,
Hmm.
clearly like that is important because I've seen it through my family and seeing how I want like my one of my uncles was a walking miracle. Literally the doctors would say
Really.
he was a miracle and I mean God bless him and I see things that I'm like, all right, how do I want to show up in my future self? Like, do I want to go through certain things or do I want to do things differently? Because I know that
Hmm.
it's in my gene, you know, it's in my
Right. Right.
genealogy. So um, I'm gonna do
That's
I yeah
Yeah, that's more intention, knowing your intention, how you want to show up every day and what you want your life to communicate and contribute versus having a goal.
right
There's a difference. And I think
yes
you are very intentionally, living this journey day to
yeah
day. How do you
absolutely.
stay motivated?
You know, I do read every morning. I've gotten big into listening to audiobooks. So I listen to different things that inspire and motivate me, like those books we talked about. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'll put them back on and I'll be like, I'm gonna read. Like I have certain chapters that I enjoy that spoke to me, and I'll listen to them as I walk. Um, but also just doing one thing, introducing one thing at a time. Because I
Mm,
used to get very overwhelmed and just saying, okay, I'm going to do this thing. So I didn't start out, you know, y'all see me on Instagram and they're like, oh, she does yoga, she's reading, she's doing that, da, da, da. But if you follow back in the timeline, I
right.
didn't do all of that at once. It was like one thing at a time. And when I
Very
started
smart.
working out, yoga, I did yoga and I was doing the 5 minute classes on YouTube and that was it. And that's it.
That
I
was
was
it.
like, that's all I'm doing for the
Got to
day. And
start somewhere. It's what I
right,
say to people, you have to take at least one step forward. Nothing
that's it.
changes if nothing changes. So you started by making a change, 5 minutes, and this is it. This is my journey. This is the beginning of it.
Right. And then I said, all right, I'll read. And I gave myself like a page or something, or like 2 minutes if I was listening. And I'll walk the dogs down the street, halfway down the street, come back. But listen, if you have dogs and you get started on walking, they will keep you accountable. Like
Oh, sure.
it's done. But yeah, it was really just about one small step at a time. That's how I started that.
Yeah, and that'll shift you. That'll shift you completely if you are consistent. Part of like what James
Right.
Clear says in Atomic Habits is, being consistent every day and also understanding, like you said, who is this future self?
Yes.
And how am I honoring her this moment with what I'm doing, with what I'm thinking, with what I'm feeling, with how I'm with my actions? Am I
Absolutely.
getting am I doing this and getting one step closer to her, or am I, taking 10 steps back away from her? Because everything boils
Mhm.
down to the choices we make in life. So,
Yes, and always coming back. And I know you had said that before with your why. And you know, I have goals written out on a goal sheet. I have monthly ones, and then I have a big year um,
yeah.
overview of what I'd like to be. And there's power in looking back at that because I think it's, you know, I'll have to step back and say, what is my goal? Like, what do I want to see happen in my life? And am I making steps towards that? Because yes, God has the ultimate story, but like you said, you're gonna be in the same place if you don't move. You know, like he's not gonna just have everything show up at your door. And so
Sure.
I had to recognize where do I want to be, and am I making those steps? Is it perfect? No. Have I figured it out? No. But do I feel stronger at this moment? Absolutely. I feel
Yeah.
stronger in my
And
mind.
that's
I feel
big.
yeah, and my body. So
Yeah, it's about progress, right? Not
yes,
perfection.
absolutely.
Super important. How are you? filling your personal love tank in addition to the readings that you do and working out and so on? So I told you the dogs
Well,
would go crazy.
I love them. I love them. How am I feeling my love? I really make it a point to connect with those that I love and those
Oh,
that really just fill my soul. And there's certain people in my life that I know I could pick up and call. And again, it's not a one-sided relationship though. It's really just our friendship and our community is like that, where we're going to fill one another up. And um and it's, sometimes we'll be like, how come this person hasn't called me? And we're so busy. Life is
yeah.
so busy. And I've recognized that making that first call is really what does it. And when I get on the foot list, I get a my friends, they fill me. They really are the biggest blessing to my life. And so that's what
Connection
I
is so
do.
important. And the older I get, the more I was just saying in this and with my last podcast guest, and that's that I'm at a point where I'm sort of done with relationships or connections that are not authentic.
Mm,
Really seeking out people who are like you, vulnerable, authentic, or real, have depth to them
absolutely.
and really open me up to something
Right.
great in my life, as opposed to people that drain you and
Right.
suck the energy out of you and don't
Yes.
contribute, to the friendship, to the relationship. And sometimes it's hard, but we need to let some of those folks go in our lives, very easy, very gently, and just let them exit.
Yeah.
And I know that's
Yes.
very difficult, especially if you're a loyal person like I am to people. But we have to look at the
Same.
bigger picture of our lives and what we intend, for
Yeah.
ourselves. But that's
A
beautiful.
reason.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that you have
A
your friends
reason,
that feel
season,
you.
or lifetime.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I have just like one, not one last question, but you had a post which I have here on my phone because I want to talk a little bit about that. And you said what it was about failing.
Mm,
And so on
mm,
journeys like this, weight loss, relationship journeys, career journeys,
right.
a lot of times you talked about what happens when we attach the word fail,
Mm,
right, to any part of our journey. I thought that was a spectacular post. And you talked about some of the words that show up with it: self-judgment, spiraling, give up mentally, hiding, shame, and fear of judgment. But, you know, it was about
yeah.
what failing kind of teaches us. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes. So I don't believe our life journey is pass or fail. I don't think, I mean, in my beliefs system of Jesus, I don't think that's why he came. So we could be like, I failed. Like there's so much power in who we are in our lives. Like, and the power to keep going. I think when we attach fail, and even in some schools, as teachers, we know like they don't
Yes.
even use that because there's a mentality associated to that as to not as there's no return. Once
Mhm.
you fail, there's no return. I failed at a job, my business failed, this failed. Like people attach it and they say that's not for me. But a health journey, like you can't be like that's not for me. At least that's
Yeah,
where I
right.
am. Like it is for me whether I feel. So I'm very mindful, and like we were talking about earlier, just being intentional of the words that I use
Yes.
and how I speak to myself. And fail is just it can't be part of my vocabulary. Um, I was talking to a friend once and she was like, "Oh man, losing weight is hard." And I was like, "I'm not using the word hard. I don't want to say it's hard." But I was like, "No, it is hard. It's hard." But
Let's be
you
real.
know, but I'm like, there's certain words, but fail is definitely that's a hard no. Like I cannot say that I failed. Did something not work for me? Because
Mhm.
I worked out with a trainer. He was incredible, and he mentioned how this wellness journey is like one big experiment. Like
Ooh,
you're learning what works for your body. If you eat something and you next day you wake up and you're 5 pounds heavier, then like that's not like, oh, forget this. I can't do this. I eat and I'm 5 pounds heavier. No, you didn't fail. You learned. You learned when I eat this, my body retains it in such a way that I now go up in weight. And instead of
mhm.
looking at the scale as like, "Oh my god, it's going up and down." Like right now, my weight has not moved. To be honest, people see me online, they're like, "Oh wow, like you look like." I'm like, "Thanks." Learning how to take, also compliments as well, but
Receive, being able to receive. Yeah.
yeah, and just recognizing. but I feel stronger? Like, I lifted chairs this morning and I was doing a whole bunch of stuff, going up and down the stairs that otherwise would have winded me, and I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm learning that success is different at every stage.
sure.
And at this stage, I'm lifting weights and I'm feeling stronger, and the scale's not going to move. But that doesn't mean I'm failing at my journey,
Yeah.
which to some you might be like, this is failing me. I'm not losing pounds. So it's again, it's recognizing what Darcy said to me that day, and he had said it was just it's an experiment. Like, learn your
Hmm.
body. And I think that's
Sure.
the power of this journey. I'm learning so much about how what works and what doesn't work for me. So yeah, I just refuse. I refuse to say, because listen, if I say fail, I fail.
And
If
not only that, I think part of what you wrote in your post was that some, we have to see failing as as learning and as a redirection sometimes, just like you said, okay, this isn't working, let's go left instead of right, or instead of staying where we're at. So it's like, Edison and his light bulb. How many times
mm,
did he try? I think 100 and something. And he said, I didn't fail. I learned, what materials didn't work with the light
mm,
bulb. He said, I learned 99 ways not to make a light bulb.
right? And I
So,
love that you say that. As soon as you said that, you know what popped in my head is that so much of our mindset surrounding failure has come from naysayers around us. And in
sure.
this age of social media, people put things out there. They're like, "Oh, that's crap. Oh, you failed." Da 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 da. But I just think back to Edison and how there was no social media. Like, he was allowed
Right.
to fail, and like it wasn't a thing.
Right.
You're just
Nobody
doing
thought,
you.
only you.
Right? Nobody knew, but he was able to. But when and again, so that's I get. I'm transparent, but I'm also very mindful that there are those who are around you, and I think that's where failing it's a mindset, right?
Hmm.
People who are around us who might feel like they've failed, and what do? They put that energy out on you too, so
Yeah.
that you feel like it's the end, but it's not. It's not.
So true. So wise. This is why you're my guest today. I love it. I love everything you said. Love the
Oh,
conversation.
thank you.
Everybody answers this last question, and it is, what has been a moment of clarity for you at any point in your life, and what did it teach you?
I think the clarity was what I touched on earlier, was just that teaching is part of who I am. And it's not necessary to the subject that I'm teaching, but rather being used as a vessel for showing
Mm,
people love and just encouraging their hearts. So it's just been an honor to be able to be a teacher in so many realms. And yeah, I just
yeah,
had to come clear with, like, Diana, you might not have always wanted to be a teacher, but God is using you in that space to really make a change that you never thought possible in your life.
that's amazing to have that aha moment and that clarity to know that you're here for a higher purpose than whatever
Mhm.
it is your job is that you're doing.
Yes.
There's something beyond
Yes.
that if we just care to look a little further.
Yes.
Hey, it has been beyond a pleasure. I feel like down the road, maybe in season 3, we're gonna have a
Yeah.
part 2 to this, and catch you back at the tail end of
Yes.
the next part of your journey, because, this has had hopefully a lot of insight. So for you, the listener, I hope this episode sparked the insight within. I encourage you to give my guest and friend here, Diana, a follow on social media, and you can find her over at Diana_Marie. You can follow that journey that she is on now. And remember that you can watch this episode and all my others with my guests on the YouTube channel. Just search for my name, Jeanette Melian. Until next time, I send you love and light. May your cup be full and overflowing.